Change isn't an idea, it's not a strategy, it's a cause, a belief, a vision of what could be rather than what is. Too often we think change begins with a plan. It doesn't. Change begins with belief. Real, lasting change always starts with one person saying, "This is not good enough," followed by the courage to do something about it. But here's the truth. Change is uncomfortable. It's messy. It means challenging the status quo. It means standing alone before anyone else joins you. But the ones who dare to lead with why, with purpose, are the ones who spark movements. You don't create change by shouting louder. You create change by inviting others into a story bigger than themselves, a vision they can believe in. When people feel like they belong to something meaningful, they show up differently. They don't just comply, they commit. Leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about taking care of the people in your charge. And change, real change, is the result of trust, empathy, and unwavering commitment to a cause. So if you want to create change, don't ask, "What should we do?" Ask, "What do we believe?" Ask, "Who are we doing this for?" And then lead like it matters, because it does. We often assume change begins with action, that to create something new, we need to immediately start doing. But lasting, meaningful change doesn't begin with a task, it begins with belief. Belief is the spark. It is the emotional fuel that drives commitment long after motivation fades. Belief is what gives us the courage to stand when everyone else sits. It is what allows us to say yes to something that doesn't exist yet, simply because we see it in our minds and feel it in our hearts. When we believe in something deeply, we don't need to be convinced to take the first step. We are compelled. The belief pulls us forward. We don't create change because we have to. We do it because we can imagine not doing it. This is the difference between compliance and conviction. Compliance is about rules and systems and accountability. Conviction is about vision. It is about waking up in the morning and knowing that what you're doing matters. And belief is contagious. When one person believes so deeply in an idea, in a cause, in a future that doesn't yet exist, it gives others permission to believe too. That's how movements begin. Not with 1,000 people moving in unison, but with one person refusing to sit still. One person saying, "I believe we can do better." One person saying, "I believe this can change." And when that belief is authentic, when it comes from a place of purpose instead of ego, it resonates. You don't have to have all the answers to create change. You just need to start with belief. People don't follow those who know everything. They follow those who are certain about something. And when they see that your belief is rooted in something real, something meaningful, they want to be a part of it, not because of what you're doing, but because of why you're doing it. Think about any great movement in history. It didn't begin with a 10-point plan. It started with a belief that equality matters, that people deserve dignity, that ideas can reshape the world. That belief fueled action, and that action turned into momentum. The tactics, the strategies, they all came later. First came the belief. This is true for teams, organizations, and individuals alike. When people believe in what they're doing, they show up differently. They take ownership. They go beyond their job description. They care. Belief ignites passion, and passion leads to persistence. Because when you believe in something, you don't stop when it gets hard. You don't walk away when it's uncomfortable. You stay, you adapt, you grow. Because the belief is stronger than the challenge. And belief doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be honest. Some of the most powerful belief systems are quiet. They're not about slogans or speeches. They're about showing up consistently, day after day, living out the values that matter most: integrity, courage, compassion, vision. These are the real building blocks of change. But belief must be nurtured. It's not enough to feel it once and expect it to carry you forever. You have to return to it, reconnect with it, especially when things get tough, because there will be resistance, there will be setbacks, there will be moments when you question if it's worth it. And in those moments, your belief becomes your anchor. It reminds you who you are. It reminds you why you started. It reminds you that you are part of something that matters. And sometimes just remembering that is enough to get you through the next hour, the next day, the next challenge. Belief creates clarity. When you start with belief, you know what to say yes to. You know what to walk away from. You stop chasing every opportunity and start aligning with purpose. That clarity gives you power. Because you're no longer operating out of fear or urgency, you're operating out of alignment. And here's the most important part. Belief is a choice. You don't have to wait for permission. You don't have to wait for certainty. You don't have to wait until you feel ready. You choose to believe. You choose to see a better future. You choose to step toward it even when the path is unclear. Because belief isn't about what's guaranteed, it's about what's possible. And the moment you believe something is possible, you begin to change not just your world, but the world around you. Challenging the status quo means stepping into discomfort. It means asking questions that others are too afraid to ask. It means standing in front of what's always been and daring to imagine what could be. The status quo is safe. It's familiar. It gives us structure, predictability, and a sense of control. But it can also be limiting. It can become a cage disguised as a comfort zone. And nothing truly transformative happens inside that zone. Every great innovation, every social breakthrough, every leap forward, it all started with someone saying, this isn't good enough. And not just saying it once, but saying it consistently in the face of resistance. Because when you challenge the status quo, you threaten comfort. You unsettle systems that benefit from things staying exactly as they are. And that's hard, but it's necessary, because growth and comfort cannot coexist. People cling to the status quo because it feels secure. It tells them, this is the way things have always worked. But just because something has worked doesn't mean it's working now. The world is not static. People evolve. Needs change. Cultures shift. What was relevant yesterday may be harmful today. What was effective before may be outdated now. Challenging the status quo is about recognizing those shifts and choosing to respond to them instead of ignoring them. The biggest obstacle to change is not a lack of ideas. It's fear. Fear of losing what we know, fear of stepping into the unknown, fear of being wrong, fear of standing alone. But progress demands courage. It asks you to be brave enough to go first, to speak up when it's easier to stay silent, to disrupt when it's easier to conform. It asks you to care more about making a difference than being accepted. Challenging the status quo doesn't mean tearing everything down. It means being willing to look at things honestly and ask, is this still serving us? Is this still the best way? Is this aligned with who we are and where we want to go? It's not rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It's intention. It's responsibility. It's the ability to honor the past without being held hostage by it. There will always be voices that say, why change something that isn't broken? But sometimes it's not about what's broken. It's about what's possible. It's about not settling for good enough when excellence is within reach. It's about not accepting injustice simply because it's been normalized. It's about not limiting your vision to what others can see. When you challenge the status quo, you become a mirror. You force people to confront what they've ignored. You invite them to re-examine assumptions, habits, and structures that have gone unquestioned for too long. And that can make people uncomfortable. But discomfort is a sign of growth. It's a sign that something new is emerging. Leaders who drive real change are never satisfied with comfort. They don't just manage what exists. They imagine what's possible. They look at their teams, their communities, their industries and say, there has to be a better way. And they don't wait for someone else to fix it. They step forward and become the catalyst. They embrace the friction that comes with challenging norms because they know that's where momentum begins. The truth is, it's easy to criticize from the sidelines. It's easy to point out what's wrong. But true changemakers go beyond criticism. They step into the arena. They offer solutions. They build new models. They test new ideas. They make things better, not by being loud, but by being committed. They are relentless not because it's easy, but because they believe in what they're fighting for. Challenging the status quo also means challenging yourself. It means questioning your own assumptions, your own patterns, your own comfort zones. It's not just about changing systems. It's about transforming mindsets. Sometimes the hardest truth to face is that we've become part of the very system we want to disrupt. And when we see that, we have a choice: double down on what's familiar or grow into something better. There will be days when you feel isolated, when no one else sees what you see, when you start to wonder if you're wrong for thinking differently. But in those moments, remember, every great change once looked impossible. Every new idea once sounded crazy. Every breakthrough once required someone to say, I see a future others don't see yet. That someone can be you. The power to challenge the status quo doesn't come from authority or title. It comes from vision. It comes from purpose. It comes from the willingness to act when it's easier to observe. You don't have to have all the answers to start. You just need to have the courage to ask the question, what if we did this differently? That question, when asked with conviction and care, has the power to change everything. Leading with empathy is not about being soft. It's about being human. It's about recognizing that people are not resources, tasks, or job titles. They are human beings with stories, struggles, dreams, and depth. When you lead with empathy, you see beyond the surface. You listen not just to respond, but to understand. You stop assuming and you start asking. You stop managing behavior and you start understanding motivation. Empathy is the quiet strength behind the most impactful leaders. It doesn't demand attention, but its presence transforms everything. It turns authority into influence, teams into families, and workplaces into communities. Because people don't give their best to someone they fear, they give it to someone they trust. And trust is born in the small moments of understanding. It's built when someone feels seen, heard, and valued. Leadership without empathy is hollow. It's efficient, maybe, but it's not effective. It can produce results, but it rarely inspires loyalty. Empathy is what turns goals into shared missions. It's what makes people feel like they're part of something that matters, not just something that profits. When you lead with empathy, you begin with the person, not the performance. You realize that what someone is going through will always affect what they can give. And instead of pushing harder, you reach deeper. Too many leaders mistake being in charge for being right. But the best leaders understand that they don't have all the answers. They are curious. They are willing to learn. They don't lead from a pedestal. They lead from beside. Empathy requires you to pause and ask, what might this person be experiencing? It's easy to criticize what you don't understand. It's easy to judge from a distance. But empathy closes the distance. It invites connection. It builds bridges. In moments of stress, people don't need perfection. They need presence. When a team is struggling, when a person is burned out, when something feels off, empathy allows you to lean in rather than pull away. It allows you to say, I may not have the solution, but I'm here to listen. And sometimes that's the most powerful leadership move of all. Because solutions can be found later, but feeling supported is something people need now. Empathy in leadership isn't a one-time action, it's a way of operating. It shows up in the questions you ask, the time you give, the assumptions you challenge, and the grace you extend. It's not about fixing everyone's problems. It's about not ignoring them. It's about creating a culture where people feel safe being real, where vulnerability isn't punished but respected. That's where innovation lives. That's where creativity flourishes. People take risks when they feel safe. They speak up when they feel heard. Empathetic leadership also means understanding your own limits. It's not about carrying everyone's burden. It's about holding space for others while staying grounded yourself. It's the balance of strength and softness. Empathy doesn't mean lowering standards. It means understanding what people need to meet them. It means giving feedback with care, not cruelty. It means challenging people in a way that reminds them of their potential, not their inadequacy. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to leading people. Everyone has different motivations, fears, strengths, and pain points. Empathy allows you to adjust your leadership style to meet people where they are, not where you think they should be. And when people feel understood, they bring more of themselves to the table. They open up, they contribute more, they stay longer. In today's world where stress is high and attention is scattered, empathy is not optional, it's essential. People are not just looking for jobs, they're looking for meaning. They want to be part of environments where they matter, where they're not reduced to metrics or machines. Leading with empathy is the most human, and often the most effective, way to create that environment. It's not about fixing people, it's about walking alongside them. It's about being strong enough to care and wise enough to listen. Empathy is the difference between pushing people to perform and inspiring them to care. It's what creates loyalty that no salary can buy. It's what turns a group of individuals into a team. It's what gives people the courage to speak up, to bring ideas forward, to take ownership, because they know they are not just employees, they are seen as people. Leadership is not just about outcomes, it's about people. And when you lead with empathy, you elevate both. You create a space where people feel safe enough to be bold, cared for enough to take risks, and supported enough to keep going when it's hard. That's the kind of leadership that doesn't just get results, it creates lasting change. Making it about others is the heart of meaningful leadership and impactful change. It's the shift from self to service, from ego to empathy, from personal gain to collective growth. When you make it about others, you unlock the most powerful force in leadership: trust. Because people know when your actions are rooted in your own ambition, and they also know when your intentions are genuinely about helping them grow, succeed, and thrive. It's easy to fall into the trap of leading for recognition, to build something so you can stand on top of it and say, look what I did. But the leaders who truly lead a legacy are the ones who build platforms for others to stand on. They don't crave the spotlight, they use their influence to shine it on others. They ask, how can I lift someone else instead of how can I elevate myself? And in doing so, they inspire people to show up not out of obligation, but out of belief. When you make it about others, you take the time to understand what motivates them. You listen, not to steer, but to support. You stop trying to force your path onto others and instead help them walk their own. You realize that success is not a competition, it's a collaboration. It's not about who gets there first. It's about how many people you can bring with you. That's the kind of leadership that transforms lives, not just outcomes. In a world obsessed with personal branding, it's revolutionary to lead with humility, to make your measure of success not how far you climb, but how far you help others rise. That doesn't mean you ignore your goals. It means you understand that your goals are more meaningful when they're connected to a greater good, that your impact multiplies when it's shared, and that fulfillment comes not from what you get, but from what you give. Making it about others doesn't mean being a pushover. It doesn't mean saying yes to everything or avoiding tough decisions. It means putting people first in a way that is honest, clear, and intentional. It means holding people accountable because you believe in their potential, not because you want control. It means creating environments where people feel empowered, not managed, where they are trusted, not micromanaged, where they are coached, not commanded. The best leaders aren't the ones with the most followers. They're the ones who create the most leaders. That only happens when your mission is bigger than you. When your focus is on developing others, not just achieving for yourself. When you recognize that your influence is a tool for good, not a tool for personal gain. That mindset shift from me to we is where real impact begins. And it's not just about leadership in the formal sense. Anyone can make it about others. In a conversation, in a project, in a moment. It's about being present enough to notice who needs encouragement, who needs a chance, who needs someone to say, I believe in you. Those small moments add up. They create cultures of care, trust, and loyalty. They build a foundation where people can be their best selves, not out of fear, but out of purpose. When people feel like it's about them, they feel safe. They feel like they matter. And when people feel safe, they take risks. They contribute more. They engage deeper because they know they're not just a means to an end. They are the reason for the journey. That's where excellence comes from, not from pressure, but from purpose. It takes self-awareness to make it about others. It takes emotional intelligence to pause and ask, am I doing this for me or for them? It takes strength to set aside your own need to be right or to be noticed. But the irony is when you make it about others, your influence naturally expands. People remember how you made them feel. They remember when you had their back, when you listened, when you showed up. This approach requires patience. It's not the fastest path. It's not always the loudest, but it's the most enduring. Because when people know you care, they stay, they grow, they evolve. They come back to work the next day, not just for the paycheck, but for the people, for the mission, for the shared vision you've helped them become a part of. Making it about others is not about self-denial. It's about shared success. It's about multiplying your impact by investing in others. And it's about knowing that in the long run, the most fulfilling victories are the ones you don't win alone. Making it about others is one of the most transformative decisions you can make, not just in leadership, but in life. It shifts your focus from personal ambition to collective progress. It takes your energy off yourself and redirects it toward those around you. And in doing so, it creates an environment where people feel seen, heard, and valued. When your actions begin to serve more than your own interests, you stop chasing success and start building significance. It starts with presence. Being present enough to notice someone's effort, someone's struggle, someone's silent win. It's in the moments you slow down just enough to say, I see you, without needing anything in return. It's in the questions you ask not to check a box, but to truly understand. People can feel the difference between being managed and being cared for. They can feel the difference between someone who's using them and someone who's believing in them. And that difference changes everything. When you make it about others, you begin to lead with curiosity instead of control. You become more interested in their potential than in your power. You start to see leadership not as a role to be maintained, but as a responsibility to be earned every day through trust, compassion, and service. You don't need all the answers, you just need the humility to admit you don't, and the wisdom to listen to those who might. This kind of leadership is rare because it requires something many people aren't willing to give: their ego. It asks you to stop keeping score, to stop needing credit, to stop performing. It invites you to focus on how you're making people feel, not how you're being perceived. Because the truth is, people don't remember what you achieved nearly as much as they remember how you treated them along the way. Respect, kindness, encouragement. These are the invisible legacies that outlast every trophy. When you make it about others, you build a culture where people want to show up, not because they're required to, but because they feel they belong. You become the kind of leader others want to follow, not because they have to, but because they believe you'll walk beside them. You become the kind of teammate who lifts the room just by being in it, the kind of friend who remembers what others forget, the kind of influence that doesn't need a title to make an impact. It's easy to get caught up in personal metrics, how well you're doing, how far you've come, how much you've achieved. But impact is not measured in accolades. It's measured in the lives you touch. When you lead or live for others, you widen your capacity. You begin to see beyond deadlines and goals and into the human experience. You recognize when someone's overwhelmed and step in without making it about you. You celebrate someone's idea without needing to top it. You let others speak first. And you actually listen. And the irony is, when you stop centering yourself, you grow more than you ever did before. You learn more, you connect deeper. You build a kind of influence that's rooted in something real, something that lasts. People will run through walls for someone who's been in the trenches with them. They'll give their best to someone who made them feel seen. They'll show up over and over for someone who didn't make it about themselves. This mindset requires intention. It doesn't happen by accident. In a world that constantly tells us to focus on our brand, our goals, our image, it takes real courage to focus on others. It takes strength to put someone else in the spotlight. It takes discipline to choose service over self-interest. And yet, it's the most sustainable way to lead, the most powerful way to live. Making it about others isn't about neglecting your own needs. It's about understanding that when we uplift others, we create space for everyone, including ourselves, to rise. It's not about being passive or agreeable. It's about being generous. It's about showing up for people not just when it's convenient, but when it matters. It's about doing the right thing even when no one is watching, and especially when everyone is watching. Real leadership is not a solo performance. It's a choir. It's the strength to lift your voice without silencing others. It's the grace to lead the song sometimes and step back other times. When you make it about others, you don't just empower people, you invite them to bring their whole selves to the table. And that's where magic happens. That's where innovation is born. That's where trust becomes the foundation for growth that doesn't just scale but sustains. The people who make it about others are the ones who are remembered, not for their positions, but for their impact. Not for what they said, but how they made people feel. They are the difference makers, the bridge builders, the culture shifters. They are the ones who choose connection over control, service over spotlight, and humanity over hierarchy. Commitment is easy when things are going well, when the plan is working, when the energy is high, when the rewards are visible. But the true test of commitment is what happens when everything gets uncomfortable. When the results are delayed, the path becomes uncertain, and the pressure builds. That's the space where most people begin to back off. That's the point where excuses start to sound reasonable. But real change, lasting progress, and meaningful growth only happen when you stay committed through the discomfort. Discomfort is not a sign you're on the wrong path. It's a signal that you're being stretched. And anything that grows must stretch. Comfort zones are great for stability, but they are terrible for transformation. The very nature of change means leaving behind what's familiar and stepping into something you can't fully predict or control. That tension, that unfamiliarity is where growth lives. Commitment isn't about avoiding that discomfort. It's about embracing it. It's about choosing to show up anyway, even when it's hard, even when it would be easier to quit. There's a moment in every journey when motivation fades, the excitement of starting something new wears off, and the reality of the work sets in. That's when commitment becomes the fuel. Motivation might get you going, but commitment is what keeps you going. And what makes it powerful is not the absence of struggle, but the decision to continue despite it. Every meaningful goal will challenge you. It will expose your fears, test your patience, and reveal your limits. But that's the point. That's how you expand. That's how you evolve. It's easy to be committed to an outcome. Everyone wants the result. But being committed to the process, that's where the real strength is. The day in, day out effort, the uncomfortable conversations, the inconvenient sacrifices, the failures that sting, and the feedback that humbles. If you can't commit through the discomfort, you'll never get to the transformation. Because the discomfort isn't the enemy, it's the catalyst. We live in a culture that glorifies quick wins and instant gratification, but real change doesn't work like that. Growth has a pace. Mastery takes time. Impact is built brick by brick. And most of that building happens in moments no one sees. In the grind, in the silence, in the messy middle where nothing is glamorous and everything feels uncertain. It's in those moments that your values either show up or fall away. And if you can't hold your values in discomfort, they're just preferences. There's a kind of peace that comes with choosing the hard road on purpose. When you stop resisting the discomfort and start respecting it, it stops being something you run from and starts becoming something you work with. You begin to understand that pain isn't punishment. It's part of the process. Doubt isn't a dead end. It's a doorway. And setbacks aren't the opposite of progress. They are the path to it. Committing through the discomfort doesn't mean ignoring your limits. It means recognizing them, honoring them, and still moving forward. It's not about pushing through blindly. It's about staying grounded while you stretch. Some days that might mean taking a break. Other days it means pushing a little harder. But every day it means choosing not to give up. It's about staying in the game even when it's not going your way. When you commit through discomfort, you build resilience. You build trust with yourself. Every time you choose to keep going, even when it's hard, you prove to yourself that you can, that you are capable of more than you thought, that your strength isn't in avoiding struggle, but in standing inside it with integrity and purpose. That kind of commitment inspires others, because people aren't just watching your success, they're watching how you handle the struggle. They're watching how you lead when it's not easy, how you stay aligned when the pressure's on, how you keep your character intact when circumstances test you. And when they see you stay committed, it gives them permission to do the same. It reminds them that discomfort isn't something to fear, it's something to face. Most of the time, the breakthrough is just on the other side of the breakdown. But you only get to it if you're willing to keep showing up, to keep believing, to keep putting one foot in front of the other, even if it's slower than you hoped, even if no one's cheering you on, even if you have to walk alone for a while, because discomfort isn't permanent. But the person you become when you commit through it, that lasts. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be faithful to your vision, to your values, to your people, to the work. And when discomfort knocks, don't retreat. Don't shrink. Lean in. Breathe through it. Stay the course. Because that's how real change is made. Not by avoiding the hard things, but by walking through them with courage. Change doesn't come from comfort, it comes from conviction. It comes from the willingness to believe before there's proof, to challenge what's always been, to lead with empathy, to put others before ourselves, and to stay committed even when everything in us wants to walk away. This is not just a call to act, it's a call to become. To become the kind of person who doesn't wait for change, but creates it. Who doesn't seek the easy road, but chooses the meaningful one. Because in the end, real change begins not when we talk about it, but when we live it. And when we do it together with belief, courage, compassion, and persistence, we don't just make change, we become the reason it lasts.